Good morning, happy Sunday. My name is Josh from CyclonesOZ, and today we're going to be talking about some developing significant rainfall patterns that are expected to dominate New South Wales. We've already had a significant amount of rainfall overnight in the Sydney metro area, and there is more on the cards. We'll also take a look at some weather for central Queensland, a bit of rainfall expected there. And we're also going to take a look at Western Australia's weather forecast because there is a significant amount of rainfall possible there as well. And then we're going to have to go back up into the tropics and talk about the Arafura Sea system because the GFS is being a pain in the rear end. We're going to start things off, of course, with the main story today, which is the Sydney system. It's a low pressure system currently located between Dubbo and Orange, and it is spinning out quite a significant amount of cloud activity over the Sydney metropolitan area and areas south of it, including Canberra, Jervis Bay and Wollongong. And if you were to take a look at the radar imagery, you can see, combined with the satellite imagery, there is an awful lot of rainfall actually occurring right now around the Wollongong area, extending as far south as Narooma, but it is mainly between Batemans Bay right up towards Wollongong. And Sydney is also getting a little bit of this rainfall, but it definitely is between the south side of Sydney, Botany Bay, right down towards Batemans Bay. And some of this rainfall is actually quite heavy. We're talking about 25 millimetres an hour, and this is going to be lasting again for the next 3 or 4 hours. So rainfall accumulations on top of the 100 millimetres that some locations have already picked up could be as high as 70 or 80 millimetres further. And that is, if you do the math, a further 175 to 200 millimetres expected throughout the course of this rainfall event. So a significant amount of rainfall certainly has fallen, and there is more on the cards. So for areas south of Sydney, there is the risk of moderate to major riverine flooding, some flash flooding as well in metropolitan areas, so make sure you are staying safe in what is already a very saturated river catchment, that's for sure. I've got to be really careful here as well driving on the roads. Road conditions are going to be hazardous as well. Plenty of rainfall means that those roads are going to be slippery, especially as you head in towards mountainous areas. And yeah, this rainfall, it doesn't look like it's going to be slowing down anytime soon either. It's kept itself up for the past 12 hours, and it looks like there is just another big pool of rainfall starting to move ashore right now before hopefully it indefinitely eases off in the next couple of hours. But yeah, it looks like a really healthy amount of rainfall that this part of New South Wales has received. So yeah, we got to be watching this one very closely because, like I said, the risk of flooding is quite high at this time. In terms of other significant weather around New South Wales, there really isn't an awful lot apart from this rainfall event, which is actually extending significantly far inland towards Bathurst and Canberra. There's also a little bit of rainfall up towards the north around Tamworth and Coffs Harbour, which you can see on the map through here. That's more thunderstorm based, so it is slightly heavier. We're probably talking about brief periods of heavy to intense rainfall up there, but nothing too crazy. Definitely not enough to cause major flooding, that's for sure. We've also got some pretty significant showers just offshore from Brisbane. Significant, still the wrong word actually. We've got some heavy showers just offshore from Brisbane that they're not going to be causing any pain over there in terms of wet weather. Winds are also keeping themselves in check. Like I did say, this is not expected to be a windy event from this weather system that's moving through Sydney right now. In fact, you can see a buoy just offshore from Cronulla. We're talking about winds just 5 kilometres an hour gusting to 10. So winds are really, really weak actually around this system, and that is also reciprocated on the forecast models. We're not expecting gusty winds. Maybe a few gusty winds tonight in the wake of this weather system, but nothing crazy. We're only talking about winds gusting to about 50 kilometres an hour here. So absolutely nothing to write home about, and it will be coastal based as well. So nothing too interesting happening there. Over the next 24 hours, we can expect a further 60 to 70 millimetres, like I did say, especially around the Wollongong or Appin sort of area where the radar is based down there. But again, it's not going to be as much as what we already have received in this part of Sydney. We're talking rainfall accumulations overnight approaching 100 or 120 millimetres in some locations. It certainly has been a pretty wet 24 hours with a little bit more rainfall expected to fall as well. Also up towards Newcastle, I'm noticing a couple of spots here as the birds chirp themselves up. We're talking about 70 millimetres just offshore. That might just be a model anomaly at this point, but again, there is going to be widespread 25 to 50 millimetre totals throughout a lot of the Sydney metro area and also inland throughout the rest of today. So again, make sure you are staying safe on the roads and not playing in raging rivers, because there will be some rivers that will approach their minor to moderate flooding alerts, maybe even one or two that approach the major flood alert because of how saturated this part of New South Wales is. In terms of the long-term forecast, there's also another weather system that's expected to pick itself up in central Queensland, and that's also going to drive another rainfall event in about a week's time or so for New South Wales. But we will start talking about that central Queensland weather event right now, just briefly. You can see another mid-level to upper-level trough expected to develop over the Northern Territory and South Australia, which will be bringing thunderstorms throughout the course of Wednesday evening through to Thursday and then into Friday, where they will actually really strengthen themselves up quite nicely. And we're talking about rainfall inland over the next 10 days, probably approaching 50 to 70 millimetres in some areas. In fact, it could be a little bit wetter as well in some very remote desert areas through extreme western and also into central Queensland too. In fact, up to 100 millimetres is possible. That is very healthy rainfall accumulations. Considering it will be from thunderstorms, I am a little bit concerned about the flooding risk. There's certainly going to be the chance of flash flooding as a result of strong thunderstorms like this, but it looks like it's not going to be heavy enough to cause some really significant problems. It looks like it's going to be mainly just the riverine flooding, which is possible, the minor riverine flooding, but a lot of these rivers in central Queensland are already approaching their minor to moderate flooding alerts because of what's happened in far north Queensland over the past couple of months. So any more rainfall on top of it, especially 100 millimetres falling in 24 hours, could cause some very serious problems for some areas. This might just be a wait-and-see sort of weather event. It's happening, or it's expected to happen Thursday and then into Friday before moving into New South Wales, which I'll cover in just a second. But yeah, it does look like a good amount of rainfall is expected to fall, and it's reciprocated amongst the GFS and also the Access G3 forecast model too, but it is more western focused from the GFS and the Access G3 model. So again, it is a wait-and-see sort of weather event that we're expecting here. But it does look like there is a good chance, especially in South Australia and New South Wales, of some very good rainfall totals. In southern Queensland as well, we can expect some good rainfall totals. As you get more towards central Queensland, around Charleville, Longreach, and that sort of area, the rainfall does become a little bit more uncertain, but it might just be a wait-and-see sort of weather event. We're, again, just going to have to wait and see what actually happens on that front. Now, back to New South Wales, you might be able to see as well on the forecast, there is a lot of rainfall expected around the coastal areas. About 250 millimetres in the next 10 days. About 50 millimetres of that will fall throughout the course of today, but still 200 millimetres is left out there for one weather event to claim, and it looks like that's going to be happening at next weekend. You can see Friday this weather event starts to move into central New South Wales, and it looks like it's going to develop into a nice low pressure system around Lord Howe Island and drive a whole bunch of rainfall ashore throughout Saturday, Sunday, and maybe even into early Monday as well. And we're talking about maybe 50 to 80 millimetres a day on Friday, Saturday and Sunday, and if you do the math, 80 times 3, you're talking a further 240 millimetres, which is of course a worst case scenario, but consistent, moderate to heavy rainfall will certainly do that, and it looks like that is a possibility at this time. The Access G3 model is going absolutely nuts on this weather event. They're calling more so for 280 to 350 millimetres for some spots through here. That's actually quite a lot of rainfall, especially for this time of the year. And it looks like it will be a full-blown East Coast low from the Access G3's forecast as well, developing Saturday afternoon and into Sunday morning. By Sunday morning, it looks like we've got full-blown East Coast low conditions here around the New South Wales coastline. And once again, it's Wollongong down towards Bateman's Bay that is getting hammered and blasted by this event. So no different to the weather event that is actually happening today. It's just going to be a little bit stronger than the one that we're seeing right now. In terms of wind gusts, we're talking gusts up to 100 kilometres an hour, and that will be causing some pretty significant waves Sunday afternoon, especially in towards Monday morning. They will be growing Monday morning, and they'll make coastal conditions through a lot of New South Wales quite hazardous, that's for sure, especially between the New South Wales-Victoria border right up towards Newcastle and maybe even a little bit further north as well. The Eastern WF just hasn't picked up on this as much because it isn't calling for the full-blown East Coast low conditions, and I'm not calling for it either right now, considering it is still about a week away. There will be flops and changes in the forecast, and we're just going to have to wait and see what actually happens. But it looks like the chances are looking pretty high at this time for some pretty significant rainfall towards next weekend, especially if this mid-level trough through New South Wales and South Australia develops like the forecast is suggesting, because as that travels through New South Wales, exactly like the one that we've seen over the last couple of days, we're going to be talking about a lot of rainfall through there. I'm not so much expecting thunderstorms, however, from this weather event. The convective available potential energy values won't be that high, and that tells me that we're not expecting heavy to torrential rainfall. That tells me that we're expecting moderate to heavy rainfall this time. In fact, in some places it could just be drizzle for a couple of days, and don't get me wrong, drizzle is still really good for agricultural communities, even if it only amounts to 30 or 40 millimeters over 3 days. I know that doesn't sound earth-shattering in terms of rainfall accumulations, but that consistent rainfall certainly will have a good effect on green grass levels and so forth. It will be a great start to the cropping season, that's for sure. So all rainfall, especially all consistent rainfall through New South Wales and Queensland rather, is good rainfall. We can't be forgetting that. Now, before we go and take a look at the tropical cyclone expected to develop in the Arafura Sea, we're going to talk Western Australia. I'm obsessed with the Western Australian weather right now. We do actually have a couple of showers and storms moving south around Albany to Esperance at this time, but they'll be easing off throughout the course of today. And there is actually the chance of showers in Perth, a slim chance of showers in Perth today, tomorrow, and through to Tuesday as well, when they should hopefully start to ease off. And then by next Friday, we're going to be talking about a trough expected to extend down the coastline. It could spike temperatures as well Thursday and Friday next week. We could be heading into the high 20s in terms of temperatures there, and maybe even further inland we'll be talking low 30s, but that might be a little bit of a stretch at this time. But yeah, certainly Friday afternoon we could be seeing some thunderstorm activity around the Perth area. The Access G3 model is right on board with it as well. Friday afternoon, especially offshore, so it could be prime conditions for some storm photography as well down around the Capes, around Augusta and Cape Naturalist and so forth down south. But it also looks like Perth might be in for a chance of rainfall as well Friday, and then into Saturday you can see an awful lot of rainfall expected just offshore. This is the Access G3, so take this with a heavy pinch of salt because it can go ham on total accumulated precipitation. But around the Perth Metro, 15 millimeters from the Access G3, 15 from the Eastern WF, and 10 from the 15 from the Eastern WF and 10 from the GFS. So this might be a weather event worth a second look, especially with the model congruency that we're seeing here. I know it is still quite variable, but next Friday we could be seeing 10 to 15 millimeters of rainfall, something we're going to have to watch out for. The Bureau of Meteorology not keen on it whatsoever, but you never know with a weather event like this. And that basically does it for the West Australian forecast. We're really pushing our time in this video update, but we're going to now take a look at the developing tropical low in the Arafura Sea. I've been talking about this system for probably 15 days at this point, but we're now starting to see some rumbles of activity. I'm going to play through the 12-hour satellite loop right now, and you can see there's an increased amount of convective activity, especially in the Arafura Sea to the north of Arnhem Land and Darwin and Cape Westland, so forth. And it even looks like this is just starting to rotate a little bit right now. So it's had a pretty good start to life. We've got these strong easterly conditions across a lot of the Northern Territory and some westerlies as well over Papua New Guinea. So this looks like it might be something very much worth watching over the coming couple of days. The models aren't totally keen on it, especially in the next 5 days or so. But again, if we wait and see and we play this out to around next Friday and so forth, we've still got this little swirling enhanced amount of convection and rainfall activity over New Guinea on the Indonesian side, rather, in the northern Arafura Sea. The GFS very confident on a tropical low developing here. It's now the third day running where they're calling for a full-blown tropical cyclone to actually form, but that's happening way out around 9 or 10 days out from now, next Monday and Tuesday. They're actually calling for something that could be a category 2 or 3 strength tropical cyclone as well, moving north of Melville Island. Let me tell you, this is very unlikely to be an Australian cyclone threat around Darwin and so forth, or even Melville Island. Cyclones just historically don't make it that far south. They can creep around to Timor or hug Indonesia but this time of the year, but they definitely don't make it down towards the Kimberley or even Melville Island and Darwin and that sort of area about this time of the year. So there is really a very minimal threat to land, and also considering that it is just one forecast model supporting this scenario, the Access G3 and the Eastern WF both have radio silence in terms of cyclone activity. I'm not 100% confident in calling this system at this time, but once again, we're going to have to watch this forecast very closely, and if the GFS is still calling for this in 5 days' time, this is going to be a definite on the forecast. So again, we'll just have to wait and see, and they are still calling for that significant tropical cyclone in the Philippines area. I did actually cite a comment yesterday about a couple that are going on holiday to the Philippines in around 2 weeks' time. In 2 weeks' time, we're talking about sort of May 19th, May 20th. You should be fine, even if this typhoon does form, especially if you keep towards the western side of the Philippines around Manila or Cebu, that sort of area, you should be okay and free from tropical cyclone or typhoon activity. But there is still a slim chance on Catanduanes and on the northern parts of Luzon that you do receive a typhoon. So might be a best advice to stick away from that area, especially next weekend and into early next week. But we'll have to take a look at the forecast and see what's actually in store there over the coming couple of days. Oh, it's been a long video, this one, 15 minutes and counting. It's been a pretty detailed update. There is actually a lot happening around the Australian area and even in our local environment up towards the Philippine Sea. There's not much else that's left to be covered around the Australian region in terms of rainfall and temperatures and interesting conditions and so forth. A little bit of rainfall for central Queensland and some also for far north Queensland, but nothing out of the ordinary there. But yeah, it has been a pretty good week in terms of rainfall, especially for Sydney and that sort of area, with more on the cards too. If you haven't already, then please do consider subscribing and also leave a like on the video while you're at it. Subscribe to the second channel and join the channel as well by clicking the join button and selecting a level to intensify too. But thank you so much for watching this video. The channel sponsors, thank you so much for your support. Their names are on screen right now. We're closing in on 14,000 subscribers, so if you haven't already, like I said, please consider subscribing. Your support really does mean a lot. I hope you enjoy your Sunday. Make sure you're getting plenty of rest ahead of the working week, and I'll catch you all in the next storm. Goodbye.